Hey y'all, I'm DRBibliophile, and today I am here to finally do the review of Joshua Foer's excellent book, Moonwalking with Einstein. Yes, I just said Moonwalking with Einstein, and it's a wonderful mental image that it brings to your mind, isn't it? Good, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. I'll explain in a second. Now, Moonwalking with Einstein is a book all about memory and the author's quest to figure out how his own mind works and how the minds of people like savants or just these great national memory champions work. He wanted to figure out exactly what it took to be one of them, and so he took it upon himself to, within the course of a year, go from a average Joe kind of memory to competing and winning either first or third place, can't quite remember, in the National United States Memory Championship. So it does prove it does work. The entire book goes through different methods used by mnemonists to remember things, basically. One of the things the book talks about is the very well-known method of using what's called the memory palace, and it does actually work. There are plenty of documented cases, and within the book they give you kind of a test you can go along with to try and see if you execute it properly. You should be able to remember just like a random itemized grocery list. And it does work. I'll prove it in just a second. I have it memorized. The memory palace idea is a wonderful one. The only downside I would say is I can't figure out how to forget, as dumb as that sounds. So currently my memory palace at my house is stuffed with a random grocery list of things. So it certainly does work. Now, as fantastic as the book was, and as much as I enjoyed seeing him give very in-depth interviews with everybody, including Daniel Talmadge, one of the probably most well-known savants, other than maybe the Rain Man, and just interviewing lots of people throughout it, it's a very quirky kind of world, those who just want to memorize as much as they can. I mean, you have to be a kind of eccentric person to a point to just want to sit and be able to memorize literally 10,000 places of pi, or sheets upon sheets of random numbers, or 3 up to 7 decks of cards, all randomized orders. And it gives you the techniques of how to do so, but I will say there's not much application to everyday life. There's a little bit, like obviously remembering a shopping list, which is great. The only problem is, in my case, for example, that shopping list stays with you for an eternity, unless maybe there's just something I missed and skipped on how to get rid of it. So there's not necessarily as much daily application that I was able to see. That is kind of the original intention of my picking up the book, just because I've always had a fascination with memory and the mind and everything like that. The books like Sherlock Holmes or detective stories, where they use the mind and deduction and memorization has to come into effect, have always appealed to me. So I thought when I came across this at the library, it sounded like a very intriguing thing. And first off, it was the title that grabbed my attention. I mean, Moonwalking with Einstein, that had to have some kind of an interesting story behind it. And it did, and it was a very enjoyable to read, very easy to read. You really got to see the personalities behind all of these people that compete in the memory circuit, what drives them, and what makes them really want to keep going even when they've done this. It deals with every single aspect of the mind. He figured that if he's going to interview these people with the most amazing memories known to man, then he should also be well acquainted with those who have like the worst memories. So he actually was able to interview a man who has such severe Alzheimer's that when he wakes up in the morning, he can't remember anything. Anything of the preceding memory. He has absolutely no short-term memory, is how the book says. So things that happen early in his life, such as being married, things like that, he can still recognize his wife, he knows where he lives. He does a certain routine that he does every day just because it's built up in his mind. He can still play a piano piece, but if he began talking to him and then left the room for a couple minutes and came right back, the man literally has absolutely no idea who he is. It's tragic to read, but it does give a great insight into how much we use our mind and how much we rely even on short-term memory. And the book did kind of try and give ways to improve short-term. Maybe they work for some people, they didn't personally work for me. Like I said, the only thing it really did is some of the mind palace techniques. What made this book even more interesting and slightly ironic for me was, although it's a book about memory, my forgetfulness with things in relation to this book is uncanny. I had originally intended on making a review of this almost as soon as I finished it, and I fully intend on doing it, and I just forgot. I'm finally sitting here doing it when I had mentioned at the beginning of July of doing it, and that was already a postponement of me telling myself I would do it. In addition to that, I was a little late into reading it, so I plan on renewing the book. I forgot to renew it, and then I was actually sent this right here. I don't know how well it'll show up on my camera, because my spotlight is really good. This has my name on it, my address, so it's probably a good thing you can't see that. But it actually says, first overdue notice for Daniel Richardson. This is a reminder that you have a past due library materials. Please return promptly. The item is listed below. I've had several overdue books before, I'm ashamed to say, but never to the point where they've had to personally contact me by mail and say, hey dude, we really want the book back. Yeah, so it's just, I find it's kind of humorously ironic that a book about memory leads me so forgetful. But it does work. For example, that wonderful memory list. I'll give the list and then tell you the mental image that associates it with it. So, let's see. Pickled garlic, cottage cheese, smoked salmon, 3 bottles of white wine. I don't drink. 3 pairs of assorted socks. It was 6 bottles of white wine. Then we turn hula hoops, send an email to, what was her name? Sophia, a snorkel, and a fog machine. It was a very eccentric list. Now, he actually told you some of the images as an example, so you could really solidify this in your mind. So, for example, to start out, I have me hoisting up a jar of pickled garlic. I misspoke, I said pickles. It's actually pickled garlic over my head at the end of my driveway. I don't know why, but that's what they chose, and it stuck in my head. Then we get to my front door, and that's where the cottage cheese is. But it's not simply a tub of cottage cheese. It says in the book to try and remember something, make it as big and outlandish as possible. So, instead of just a simple tub of cottage cheese, I have a kiddie pool of cottage cheese in my mind, with a very large fat woman swimming in it. It's, like I said, I'd be wonderfully pleased to be able to forget these wonderful images. But that was another tip. They said make it as outlandish as possible, so they recommended throwing a woman in it. And my mind, for whatever unpleasant reason, threw a big fat woman swimming in cottage cheese. If anyone knows how to forget things, please let me know. Then we go inside my house, and immediately to the left we have the smoked salmon. But it's Gollum sitting over a campfire turning his spit going, it's almost done. Then, for the 6 bottles of wine, we go over, there's 6 all different kinds of wine, I didn't bother to remember what they were, sitting on my couch, arguing with each other over who is the fanciest kind. Once again, this is their kind of recommendations. It works. It's stuck here forever. Then we have 3 pairs of socks, but they are bright neon colored socks drying on my lamp. It works, I promise. Then you turn, go into my dining room, and there is another woman with probably 17 hula hoops standing on my table hula hooping. So, I got the hula hoops down for sure. This is when it begins to get weird. And remember, this is all their ideas. To send the email to Sophia, that's a little bit more difficult because it is an abstract thing. It's not like apple or smoked salmon. So, this is their idea, not mine. We have Sofia Vergara sitting on the lap of a she-male, writing an email. Yeah, I promise it works, but once again, it's an image I'd love to forget. But it's there, so I have perfectly remembered to email Sophia. It would work if I actually knew anyone named Sophia. Next, for the snorkel, I have a little man. Anyone remember the show George Shrinks? It's a great show. But I have George Shrinks wearing a snorkel diving into my sink. And the last item, which was a fog machine, it wasn't actually the last item, but it's as far as I went with the Memory Palace technique, is just sitting on my counter, billowing smoke into my room. So, or my kitchen rather. So it does work. The techniques are perfect. It's been a long time, probably about a month and a half, 2 months since I've read the book, and I still have the list perfectly, so it does work. Like I said, the only downside is I really need to be able to forget it, so I can use my house for another useful Memory Palace. Overall, though, it is a fantastic book, and one I would definitely recommend. Even if you don't already have some kind of an interest in these things, it's very well written. It presents it in a very logical format. It's not overly wordy or scientific speak, doctor speak. It's a really enjoyable read that I would definitely recommend. So that's it for the review. If you guys like what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe, and always remember, reading is the special key to take you where you want to be. Thanks, and God bless. Bye.